Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, the offense looks awesome. There's no doubt about that as we get ready for the Phoenix Suns season. But the defense might be another story. How good can it be? How good does it have to be? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Friday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel by placing your first $5 bet and getting started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wonderful West Valley. How are we feeling on this Friday? Ben Garcia.
Just another week closer to some real basketball. I saw some of the highlights from the WNBA Finals Game 1. I know you watched that. I saw some of your tweets. Pretty electric stuff. So, hey, it is basketball season, my man.
Basketball is in the air. We have a preseason game tonight. We will kind of get you ready for it by talking through the big picture of this team here. We'll also clean up some of the sillier news that I want to throw at Ben here on the topic of a conversation on NBA Today and a little leak that we got from the players at practice on Thursday. But let's start here, Ben. You sent me this article by way of ESPN about the Suns' defense, or it was really like a scouting report of all of the best teams in the NBA and kind of what the scuttlebutt is. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that kind of the executives and basketball types around the league are zeroing in on this Suns defense. It's so nice how the offensive improvements we're all still hyped about, Ben, have just become, second nature. No big deal. Who cares? We're already on to the negative here. But Dave McMenamin did a scouting report sort of on the Suns where one scout said they're going to have to effing outscore everybody. Defensively, they're going to just be bad with the pieces that they have. And then another scout, they're going to be challenged. Are you as negative as these guys are, or are they just hiding behind their anonymity and taking it to the Suns here?
I'm assuming the scout was some estranged Robert Sarver guy, because I thought it was hilarious when I had read that they just got to bleeping outscore people. The Suns defense is under a microscope from a lot of people, national media. It's just a really lazy argument to say, well, you got three scorers, so therefore they don't know how to defend. We've talked about this a little bit before, but being willing defenders, and I think this team has a lot of those guys. Tyus Jones, very willing and on the perimeter, not a bad guy defensively. Bradley Beal showed last year, maybe not super stable throughout a whole season injury-wise, but he's a willing defender. Devin Booker showed willing defender. Kevin Durant as well. Everyone on this team, for the most part, is a willing defender. There's no James Hardens. There's no Russell Westbrooks at times taking plays off or Lukas. That solves a lot of issues in the regular season. In the postseason, teams will go after your deficiencies, and Suns' biggest deficiency is size. And we will see that get exposed in the postseason. To what extent, I don't know, because every team's going to have their deficiency exposed. That's the biggest thing for me on the Suns defensively that I'm really worried about. It's not perimeter defense. It's not lack of effort. It's the fact that they're just really small. And we've talked about this before. Just throwing a tall guy out there doesn't solve the size problem. Miles Plumlee and Bol ain't going to cut it defensively. So you're praying Nurkic, who is an amazing defender, to just stay out of foul trouble. So that is the one thing that does catch my eye. What about you?
When I was training my dog, we had one of those air horns, Ben, that, like they do something and you go, and they stop. We need one with you for Miles Plumlee. Mason Plumlee. His name's Mason.
Did I say Miles again?
You said Miles.
I'm just saying Mason from now on. I'm just going to say
Not
Mason.
even Plumlee. Yeah, just get it out of your head.
Oh, wait a second. I'm just gonna say Plumlee, not Mason. I cannot believe I call this guy Miles Plumlee.
Just the
all
last
the
name
time.
will be
I'm
even easier, because then we don't even need to know which one you're talking about, and it'll
it's crazy.
Translate. Look, okay,
they
so
put Miles Plumlee out there too. They'd have the same issue.
Probably. All right, so okay, what are my issues? I think, to me, one, to respond to yours, size does create a perimeter defensive concern to me. So I think they're small everywhere in a way, and not even just small, but like they lack kind of like athleticism and force. You know, like you can have small teams that, Drew Holiday is not 6'9", but no one would ever say that he's a weak point, right? So it's like, even against bigger players, it's kind of the lack of all of it, the lack of physicality overall that they're able to put on the court is an issue, and I would echo that one for sure. I guess a couple things beyond that. One is kind of like a domino effect from them not being super big, is they have to be ironclad on time with every rotation, and they aren't. And that's, something I put a clip on Twitter that was of Josh Okogie creating a turnover with like a weak side help rotation. And he's one of the best team defenders on this team as well. They don't have a lot of guys that are in position on time consistently and able to affect what the offense wants to do just with their positioning and their placement. That's a problem. That's something you can outdo your lack of size with that they're not doing. But honestly, on an even more basic level, Ben, I mean, if we go into game number 1, let's just start. We think things could improve. Guys can get better. There could be trades, whatever. On opening night, how many players are we going to look at in the Suns rotation and say they're a good defender? If you look at the whole league and you're just saying which guys on each team are good defenders, not who we believe in or who we think could improve, good defenders right away. I think the answer is 2.
Yeah, I would have said 2 as well.
Durant and Dunn?
Okay, I would have said 3 then. I forgot about Dunn. I can't believe I forgot about sweet baby Ryan Dunn.
Your guy.
Kevin Durant, Ryan Dunn, and I do think Grayson Allen is a fine defender. I do think so. Okay. I don't think he's amazing, but I do think he's I think he's good.
I think Grayson is as good as Booker or Beal, and I would even frankly say that the ceiling for Booker and Beal is a lot higher than Allen. I think they're both better athletes. For just lack of argument's sake, 2, because we can both agree on Ryan Dunn and Kevin Durant. We can both agree to that. 2's not enough.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
And I mean that in all the senses of the word, good defender, right? Like, I mean, I'm willing to give credit to different skill sets and different ways that guys can impact the game, and I still can only get to 2. I mean, maybe you could convince me Royce O'Neal on a good night, but the more that I watch him, I mean, he's like a worse Jay Crowder, and he, he doesn't have that on-ball defense that made Jay special, where he was incredibly strong, and at the very least, he could hold up against a LeBron James or somebody like that. Royce doesn't have that. He kind of just has the other stuff, and that's not a great defender. So they're going to be at a disadvantage on a night-to-night basis with this. I don't really think there's any way around that. And we haven't even gotten to the center position. I mean, this scout says Tyus not a good defender, Book fouls a ton, Brad is small, Kevin's good, but he's 37, and Nurk is one of the worst pick-and-roll defenders in the league. I mean, I'm not going to let that scout sway me, but I don't think everything he's saying is crazy.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to have to do with how much of that gets fixed over the regular season and into the playoffs, because I don't think in the regular season it's that big of a deal. I do think that they're going to get into some really rough matchups with the Celtics or the Lakers or Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets. Like, those teams are just really big and physical. And that was a really smart thing you had said earlier, which was basically this team doesn't really have a ton of physical guys, like physical presence. And Kevin Durant, although you and I both think he's a very good defender and in his prime, an elite defender, even he says he's not really looking for the physical contact as much anymore unless he really has to. That stuff can play a massive role in the Suns in the playoffs. I am not super worried about it in the regular season. These are things that they're going to have to tune up figure out, and they're going to have to make up for these things in other ways. Get in passing lanes, disrupt defenses, disrupt offenses, pick up guys full court. They're just going to have to make do with what they have, as well as, so far down the line, they're going to have to make a trade. Maybe not the trade that we thought of before, where I was pounding the table for Dorian Finney-Smith. Maybe if Ryan Dunn is awesome, that's not the issue. You go get someone else which by the way would be cheaper if it's a backup big or a backup center. But yeah, no, I am very skeptical of this team getting bullied, both down low and just on a night in and night out basis.
Okay. This may not come as a surprise to anybody listening, right? We've known this. We talked about their identity heading into the preseason as part of our preview series, and we agreed it's going to have to be offense. You could look, like you said, take one look at this roster and at this big three. That's no secret. How good is good enough, though? We'll answer that next. First, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app, the best place to buy any ticket for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and more. Gametime even has a new feature called Gametime Picks to make getting those tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We got tons of sports going on right now. Ben mentioned the WNBA finals. The baseball playoffs are going on. The NFL season is in full swing. The basketball season is coming up. A lot going on in the Valley, a lot going on in other cities. Wherever you are, whatever you love in the sports world, odds are there's a great event going on. Check it out at Gametime. Get the best price, the best deal, the best value with Gametime Picks. You always get the seat views and the all-in pricing on Gametime, no matter what you're looking at. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling. So, we agree. It's a weakness. Duh. That's why they hired Frank Vogel. That's why they drafted Ryan Dunn. That's why they've done any number of things, getting Royce O'Neal and everything else to try to shore up that end of the court. Last year, you mentioned the difference between regular season and playoffs. They were 12th, 13th in the regular season, and their defense absolutely collapsed. They made the Minnesota Timberwolves look like the prime Warriors out there. They're an offense that was suspect in the regular season in Minnesota suddenly looked unbeatable because the Suns' defense completely fell apart. In the regular season, though, can they do better? Is it realistic for us to expect that they do better? Or is everything just going to be about building up what that postseason defense is going to look like?
Yeah, the Suns were 13th last year in defensive rating. I do have that up here, but no, they can't get any better. I think if you are expecting them to get better defensively from going from a defensive-minded head coach to an offensive-minded head coach in a starting lineup that has gotten smaller, I think you're just hoping that they can replicate exactly what they did last year. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think they were 8th in the second half of last season in defensive rating. That was obviously a top 10 defense. That was a team that had just a different variety to it. Bradley Beal was still injured up and down. Devin Booker, I don't think he missed any games, but Kevin Durant as well. Those guys are still trying to find that chemistry as well on the defensive end. I think you're kind of crazy if you expect them to be any better this year defensively. Last year, Frank Vogel, although I think he was a complete buffoon offensively, just from the first couple of preseason games I've seen, he did know what he was doing defensively. And he did that with the Pacers years ago. And he made that Lakers team a better defensive team in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, or 2021. This team, Tyus Jones, I'm worried about it. They're really small in a starting lineup. I'm not so sure what they're going to do to close out lineups if they're going up against the Timberwolves, because you had mentioned their offense looked awesome. You want to know why? Because Rudy Gobert, who gets played off the floor in every playoff series known to man besides the Phoenix Suns, was awesome. Karl Anthony Towns in Game 3 and Game 4 were really good. So this is what worries for me about the Suns. And I think if you have any expectations for their defense to be better, I think you're setting yourself up to fail. If they can be what they did last year, which just hover just above average, I can deal with that. What say you?
So I like the delineation between regular season and playoffs. I think that's kind of how you have to look at it. On both sides of the court in the modern NBA, it's a different sport almost. And to me, the regular season is about your ceiling and your floor, right? So how do you raise your floor? That's been the conversation. Sticking with offense for a moment, just to illustrate the differences that I'm talking about. The margins, the floor, that's been all that we've been talking about. Taking threes, pushing the pace, cutting down on turnovers. That's all raising your floor, making it so that on any given night, you're not going to beat yourself and you're going to take the right kinds of shots and you're going to be efficient. The same thing could be said on the defensive end, right? The defensive end margins are things from last year, like the Suns were a bad rebounding team. I'm not convinced based on their personnel that they can get a whole heck of a lot better there, but maybe they get a little better, and that helps them on a night-to-night basis in the regular season. They didn't force any turnovers. You mentioned that last segment. Can they be a little bit more aggressive and maybe with some more veterans on this team and some athletes like Ryan Dunn playing more minutes and even Tyus Jones, I think, is somebody I could see generating more steals than the other guards the Suns played last year. Can they raise their floor as a defense? And I think that could make them go from 13th to 11th or 10th or 9th, but they're not going to be one of the best defenses in the league. They're not going to crack that upper echelon. I don't think by any means. It would take an even bigger leap from Nurkic or Dunn just really being that good, or a trade. I think those are kind of the only ways I could see it happening. But then the ceiling. So the ceiling on offense is you have Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal. You have a high ceiling on offense because you have amazing players. The Suns' ceiling on defense, I don't see what that is. You know what I mean? That's the difference between the Celtics being, okay, they're kind of tough to score on last year, to, wow, Luka Doncic is struggling against them all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Or whatever example you
only
you
team to slow them down.
And so that's kind of how I look at it. I think that the Suns can raise their floor on defense, and so maybe they tick up a little bit in the rankings in terms of all that. But that ceiling, I don't see an answer on this roster that's obvious outside of the first-round pick that this team just brought in that's going to really change their fortunes on that end at the tippy top of everything.
You know, and it just seems like doom and gloom, right, with the defensive conversations. You can still be an NBA Finals team and be a middle-of-the-pack defensive team. The Dallas Mavericks were that last year. The Pacers were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year and were one of the worst defensive teams. They were in the bottom third. So you can do it. Your offense just better be awesome, and you better be playing with pace like the Mavericks did at times, like the Pacers did literally all the time. So it's not something that's a catastrophic failure. Things will not work out. I just need this team to be as good as they were last year in the regular season defensively. And then you kind of have to get a little lucky with the draw in the playoffs, which when people say that, immediately is seen as a bad thing. Every team has gotten lucky in the past decade winning a championship outside of the Warriors' 2 championship runs. Like, you have to get a little lucky. And there are some bad matchups. And with like the Timberwolves are a tough matchup. The Mavericks with Derek Lively and PJ Washington running up and down, like that worries me as well. The Nuggets are there, the Celtics are there. Like those are the type of things that do worry me. Sorry to cut you off.
No, I was going to cut you off. That's why I let you keep going. But I was just going to put it to you this way, right? How many teams are good on both ends of the floor? This is the thing, right? So let's say that the Suns run up against a team that they're going to have a hard time stopping because their defensive ceiling is just low, right? Like the Nuggets. Well, we've seen the Suns be pretty competitive with the Nuggets because they're comfortable playing games that just end up in the 120s and 130s. The Mavs, I think you would probably say, lean more offense in terms of what really scares you about them because of the presence of Luka, even though their defense has had a good peak at times. But again, then the Suns, I feel like, can score on the Mavs defense. There's a reason Boston won the finals last year. It's because they're the only team that's great on both ends of the court. Maybe the Suns get to the finals and that becomes an issue. Maybe some other team kind of materializes. But on the flip side of it, right, the teams that have great defenses, I'm not ready to trust their offense. Minnesota, Oklahoma City. I'm not all the way there believing that their offenses are championship caliber. So that's I think the bet that the Suns are making, right? Where their defense is gonna be 10th to 15th. If they can get their offense into the top 5, top 3, which we've established should be the goal, they're just rolling with it. This isn't a secret, and they're gonna have to win that way.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you had made. Just really quickly, the Celtics, if you just look at the top 7 teams, right? Timberwolves, 1 defensive rating. They were not a very good offensive team. The Magic,
16th in the regular season.
Yeah, if you Minnesota 16th in the offense. I was gonna say,
they were like legitimately mediocre on offense.
Yeah, the Magic and the Cavs are both in the top 7 here with defensive rating. And I don't know if anyone watched that playoff series. That was a brick show the entire time. The Thunder still looking for that other shot maker. The Heat don't have any shot makers outside of playoff Jimmy. So you're right. How many teams really can do that? So if you're matched up against the Mavs or you're matched up against the Timberwolves, you just have to be able to out firepower those teams, which is the identity of this team at times. So it's not impossible.
There's fan bases who are doing the opposite conversation right now. We know our defense can slow everybody down. Can we keep up? Right? So
where would you rather be? Where would you rather be?
I'd rather be a great offensive team 10 times out of 10 in this NBA.
It's why it's not a death note. And so when people say that, first off, the Suns are not a horrific defensive team. But when people say that, it's like, would you rather be the Magic or the Cavs, or would you rather be the Suns? Like, you'd rather be the Suns in this
instance. And that's why nobody can really count the Suns out. That's why even after a sweep and everything else and the cap issues and all the stuff that gets thrown at this team, they're still up there in the betting odds. They're still getting love in the national media here and there. It's like you can't quit a team that has this type of offensive firepower, even if that defense is suspect. All right. The closeout. I'm going with it, Ben. That's what we're going to call this last segment when we rip through some different things until you can come up with a better name. That's your homework while I'm gone next week. The closeout next, going through some funnier, lighter news about this Suns team to get your Friday kicked off right. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Get started at FanDuel.com. Let's check it all out here. As we've covered daily at this point, the Cardinals 5.5-point underdogs out in Green Bay. It scares me when the Cardinals play too far east in weather that they may or may not be comfortable in. I know it's not super cold yet, but I think history tells us to be wary. We also have some game 5s Friday night. The Dodgers are favored. Bet against the Dodgers. There you go. No more words needed. That is your bet for today. You get the 200 in bonus bets regardless, so enjoy that Dodgers loss a little more if it happens, all at FanDuel.com. All right, Ben, here we go. The closeout.
You made yourself laugh.
I'm just trying to get your reaction, and you're resisting. So now
I'm serious today, Brendon. This is big time stuff. Also, you just have worn. I don't like to pick on you for this because the comment section already does so. You wear anything besides Suns gear to the show. You get a Chelsea soccer shirt on. I didn't even know you like soccer.
I do.
Well, I guess you work from home. I guess you can watch it.
I have Sun shirts. I wear Sun shirts. I have a State 48 like Suns and 4 shirt. I have a
we're not saying you don't have it. We're just saying you don't
shirt. I wear them. We gotta look. A lot of them, honestly, They're in my dark color, like winter clothes batch that I sometimes will switch out. I have like a few shirts tucked away for the winter just to mix it up, and that's where a few of them are. But yeah, we'll rotate them in. Look, when I'm back in a week or so, the games will be fast and furious. You'll be getting my. Well, I don't know when the people are listening to this, so I don't know if it'll have been a week for everybody.
When you're going to be back.
In nine days when I'm back from today, we'll circle more of those in there. But
Brendon is rich, man. You are rich. 9-day vacation. Did you tell everyone you're going to Cancun?
It's a 7-day vacation, but it's Thursday, and you're making me get specific. So I said 9. I'm not gone yet. I'm sitting here talking to you. We're doing a podcast.
Oh man.
Okay. Here's the first one I wanted to throw at you. We don't have the clip. It was short. It's honestly not necessarily worth listening to. What on earth was Kendrick Perkins talking about with Mason Plumlee?
I think it's just a clear, like, I'm going to say this because it sounds smart, and I don't think enough people know about Mason Plumlee.
Nice.
To where I think he just wanted to sound smart, but then everyone was like, we all know who Mason Plumlee is. He's not exactly a game changer. I mean, it's just classic Perk, man. Like, it's just, I don't know why.
Jones was sitting right there. If you wanted to pull the off-season edition vet who you want to make the case for. Maybe
Ryan Dunn has been everywhere on Twitter. Why don't you just pull out that name?
Yeah.
Just pull out that name.
I think here's what it is. I think that it is a backup center brotherhood thing. Perk is like, I got to stand up for my fellow reserve fives. Like, I got to just be there for him.
I mean, it's just class. It really is just classic Perk. Whether he's arguing with Kevin Durant or whether he's like Kendrick Perkins saying, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, the Phoenix Suns are like my dark horse to win the NBA championship this year. Him saying that did not make me feel better. I was like, okay, am I over evaluating this team? I literally thought that. I was like, okay, this guy's always wrong. Brendon, he said that someone on the Suns last year was going to win Defensive Player of the Year. I forgot. Bol. He said Bol was going to win Defensive Player of the Year last year. He's just rolling out the backup center from this year and just recycling that take. He didn't even go far enough.
He loves the 8th and 9th men on the Suns for whatever reason. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I think, I'm just going to throw this out there because we're not doing a full show on it. But I texted you as a joke today. Hey, segment idea. Let's talk about which player Suns fans are going to collectively hate this year. It was Drew Eubanks. It was Landry Shamet. Who's it going to be this year? And it took 1 second from last game. And I'm not out on Mason Plumlee at all. But it's going to be Mason Plumlee. Suns fans are going to hate him.
I think the year before that, it was Abdul Nader. I think people could not understand why Monty was fixated on.
They rushed him back to play in the finals.
Yeah, the throw in of the Chris Paul trade from the Thunder. I don't know. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I agree with you. Plumlee is fairly hateable. But
he's just got to. No, I'm not going to say that. He's on our team. I'm not going to say that. I don't hate Mason Plumlee, but
yeah. I agree. I don't hate him. I mean, what the hell?
I don't hate him.
I don't
hate him. But like, if you say a certain thing, it could sound worse than it is. But Kendrick Perkins,
I'm predicting the same thing as you, which is that the craziest fans online who like to rip these guys to shreds, it's going to be Mason Plumlee. That's all I'm saying. Wait, I didn't hate Landry Shamet. I believe he came on. He's been on this podcast. I don't hate Landry Shamet.
Was on this show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'll save it. Here's just let me lecture Suns fans on this. Drew Eubanks was not the reason the Suns imploded last year. He was a backup center, if I'm not mistaken, on a vet minimum deal. He did exactly what most backup centers, what below average backup centers do. I don't know what you were hoping for in Drew Eubanks, but I'll be honest with you, Brendon, there was not a single game last year where I watched Drew Eubanks and I was like, are you kidding me? This guy is... I was just like, oh, yeah, backup center. He's not very good. But Suns fans, I do find it a little charming that Suns fans every year, we just find one person. Not just Suns fans.
It's part
every
of the
team.
Fun. Yeah,
every team. I do... My early pick is Mason Plumlee to be that guy this year.
All right, rapid reaction to this one. Last thing here. So I think it was Tyus Jones who revealed on Thursday during practice that the bench took one of two scrimmages from the starters. What happened there?
I think that
who went off? How did this result come to be that the bench beat the starters? Was it Grayson? Oh, Grayson's probably not at practice because he's not playing in the game.
I was going to say Grayson too. I don't think it was Grayson. I think it was Ryan Dunn. I think they were too scared that the rookie came out and started firing on him, or Royce O'Neal. No, it's either one of those two guys. One of those guys came out firing, or maybe it's Oso, but Oso's not a big three-point
My guess
shot
would
guy.
be Royce got hot from three.
Royce is
or Damian Lee. I could see Damian Lee getting hot from three too. I think it's one of those.
I think it was either Damian Lee or Royce O'Neal. That's a good one. And like the starters. What probably happened was the bench probably took. I read the quote. I didn't see it. It was on Dwayne Rankin's page, or I didn't listen to it. It was probably the bench played super hard, beat the starters in the first game, and the starters were like, okay, you guys are talking too much. Well, let's beat them, and then that's what happened. But yeah, Royce O'Neal or Damian Lee, and then Kevin Durant took it personal, which is a good thing in basketball to take that personally. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to go guard whoever's doing this and shut them down. And that's what happened. But yeah, Royce O'Neal, I did think that was funny too. And, it's nothing to overreact to. It's just it is kind of funny to think, oh, what happens? Remember when Jimmy Butler took the second unit and bust the entire Timberwolves starting?
That one was meaningful, I will say.
That was crazy.
This one is not.
Crazy.
Yeah, no Rachel Nichols interview incoming here after like they did there.
You don't think Damian Lee had a Jimmy Butler moment? Just ripped off his jersey and
I hope he did.
Met with
Malika
Andrews or Rachel Nichols
after.
Yeah.
No, I would love to be a fly on the wall seeing however that all played out, but funny to imagine. All right, that'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe. We'll be back with a recap episode, a bonus episode after this Friday night home preseason debut for these Phoenix Suns. Get that episode and more in your feed, and we will talk to you next time.